Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma Michelle Spiritual Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. And the name of our topic being, we're still doing Bible study, Joseph in charge of Egypt. And you remember, God gave him a dream. He was 17 years old. A dream of his future and also God plan. So now his dream, it come to pass. It took a long time, but it came to pass. He gonna be in charge over everything. But his brothers have to come to him. So that was yesterday package we left off at Pharaoh had a dream. And he went and got the wise men and everything else to interpret his dream, and they could not interpret his dream. So they had to call Joseph, and the cupbearer called had talk off for Joseph when he's supposed to do that 2 years ago. He didn't let 2 years in the past, and he just now was talking to Pharaoh about Joseph. You know, um, today lesson gonna be God plan is coming to light. Joseph in charge. Both plans is coming to light. His dream when Joseph he was 17 years old of his future that he gonna be in charge. He gonna be a leader. He gonna be a king. And then also his plan. Also, so all everything is coming together. And the story gonna come from Genesis chapter 41, verse 41 through 57. So now Pharaoh had put Joseph in charge of his palace in Egypt. And then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and placed it on Joseph's finger. Now he dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Now he did all this for Joseph, because he know Joseph got the spirit of God on him. So he put him in charge, of the whole land, of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, without your word, no one will lift a hand or foot in all Egypt, and give him his daughter, Paphora to be his wife. So he about to and God told him he gonna have his family. God said he gonna be a leader, he gonna be a king. God told him all these things. So all this stuff is coming to light. And also when he meet his brother, all that gonna come to light. All the dreams that he had is coming to light. And Joseph about to have his own family. Joseph about to be in charge. Joseph is gonna be in charge, over his palace, over the land of Egypt. He gonna be in charge over everything, just like God has said. So Joseph was 30 years old. We entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from Pharaoh present and traveled throughout Egypt. Egypt is big. Now he in charge of Egypt. Now he getting right to work. He getting right to work. He gonna travel all over Egypt. Because it's big. He in charge over the whole land of Egypt. And God was working secretly behind the scene for Joseph. He put the dream in Pharaoh. Remember, I put that out. Pharaoh had the dream, with the cows and all this kind of stuff, with the abundance of 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine. The 7 years of abundance, he needed someone to collect everything, put with the 15% on the side somewhere, and put and sell the rest of the percent. Now he needed somebody wise, to keep up with all that. Remember that's dealing with the whole land, And so then he looked at Joseph. He said, "Well, you got the spirit of God with you. I'm quite sure I'm gonna put you in charge." But God put that dream in Joseph for him to need someone to be wise to take care of that land. And that was a big responsibility, because see, when God do things, he do it big. He ain't require Joseph having a small job. He required Joseph have a big job, be in charge of something big. Be a leader, a ruler, a king. So he was 30 years old. So when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, Joseph went out from Pharaoh presence after he finished talking, and he gave him a position of wherever he went right to work. I'm going to travel. And sometimes it took them days just to travel and the whole land, you know. And so 7 years of abundance, the Lord produced, the land produced, plentiful. Remember, Joseph's in charge of collecting all the food, the product in those 7 years of abundance, in Egypt. And he stored it in a city. In each city, he put the food ground in the field surrounding it. Because he got to keep record of everything. Because all the rest of in the 7 years of abundance for them, but the other cities have famine, and they gonna all have to come to Joseph for food. And Joseph got to store some, and he got to sell some because the famine is gonna be like 7 years right after that, and they're gonna hit Egypt also. So Joseph stored up the huge quantity of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping record because it had beyond his measure. Now it started overwhelming him, because it was so much coming. Remember, this is the 7 years of abundance. So you're going to have abundance, and you're going to have overflow. He was having overflow of everything, so he couldn't even keep count of it no more. So before the years of famine came, two sons were born. Remember, Pharaoh gave him his wife. His daughter. So he had two sons before the famine of the 7 years come. So Joseph, and his wife, not Pharaoh wife, Potiphar's daughter. Now his firstborn named Messiah, because God had made him forget all his trouble and all my father's household. Because he had drama with that. He done stole the Esau blessing and all this kind of stuff, and then in his household with his brothers throw him in a pit, and he was a slave. God had blessed him so much, so he forgot about all this trouble. Not forgot, but just don't even think about it. God had blessed him so much. God had put him in charge, just like God put it in his dream. It came to pass, just like God said. And by he's so blessed, and he got his own family, he got a wife, and he got kids. He in charge of everything. He don't even think about his trouble that he had. That's why he named his first son, and his first son name mean God had made me forgot all my trouble and all my father's household. His father's household was his brothers. They throw him in a pit. That's why I say one time when his brothers meet him, he already had forgive them. But then when they come to meet him, they ain't gonna recognize him, but he gonna recognize them, and he gonna play tough love. But all the while, he had forgive them already, because right here saying he forgive them already. He says his father's household is his brothers who throw him in a pit. So he forgot about all the trouble that they did. Not forgot, but he don't think about because you ain't gonna never forget how you've been treated. But you can always not think about it and just try to live your life the best way you can. And by God to give him in charge, and God give him so much blessing, so he kind of don't even worry about it no more. His second son, Ephraim, because God had made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. He got his own family. He got a wife, and he got 2 kids. And he gonna have more kids. But he done had some 2 kids before this other family come. So remember, there will be 7 years, abundance. They're in the abundance years right now, and 7 years of famine. So they got to he got to kind of store everything together, sell so much and store so much, because when the famine come, it gonna hit them too, and then when this stuff run out, the famine gonna be so severe, so that's when the Israelites gonna have to sell this stuff. So that's how they're gonna get enslaved, sell this stuff as slave, because the food gonna be to run out, so now the 7 years of famine begin, just as Joseph had said. Remember, Joseph had predict Pharaoh's dream, and that was Pharaoh's dream. So there was a famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt, there was food. In the meantime, there is food for right now for Egypt, but they also going to run out too. So when all Egypt begins to feel the famine, So people cry to Pharaoh. That's what I'm saying. They had the food that they didn't store in their abundance years, that carried over when the famine had started for everyone else. So that means they still had food for what Joseph had stored. But then when that run out, then they're gonna start feeling that famine. And that's when they're gonna be crying out to Pharaoh, but that they don't have no food to eat. So the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, and Pharaoh sent them all to Joseph. Remember, Joseph in charge. Everybody going to Pharaoh. They used to going to Pharaoh because he was in charge of everything. But now, Joseph in charge, so he telling them, he's sending them all to Joseph. You go to Joseph. Tell Joseph what's going on. Because Joseph is in charge. So now the famine has spread over the whole country. Joseph opened all the storehouses where he stole all the stuff at. And sold grains to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. So that's what I'm saying. It hit Egypt. This all part of God's plan. This all part of God's plan, because Jacob's children have to be as slaves, because Sarah took her slave servants to sleep with Abraham. So that means they automatically had to go as slaves. Because how Sarah had did it to get her first child. So now famine is everywhere, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grains from Joseph, because the famine was so severe everywhere. It was so severe everywhere. So while Jacob at in Canaan, he gonna have to send his boss over there to buy some food, and they ain't even gonna recognize that's Joseph. So we see the first the first dream that God placed in Joseph when he was 17 years old, of his future and God plan. So that's Joseph would be a leader, in charge, a king, a ruler over Egypt, but Pharaoh kept his throne. Joseph in charge. He said, I'm letting you be in charge of everything. With all respect, I'm going to keep my throne. So they had two kings. God placed a dream in Pharaoh. God placed that dream in Pharaoh about the abundance years and the famine years. So they will have 7 years of abundance. He would need someone in charge to collect all the food and their good years that are coming and store up the grain. So that was the way to put Joseph in charge. And it was Joseph's future from God working behind the scene. So God was working behind the scene for Joseph. He placed that dream in Pharaoh, and then afterwards, when Joseph interpreted his dream, and then Pharaoh, now he gonna tell Pharaoh, okay, now you need somebody to be in charge to do this and do that. So Joseph, Pharaoh was like, okay, who I'm gonna get to do that? And then he look at Joseph, okay, you're the man of God. You got the spirit of God, but I'm just put you in charge. That was all God planned. To put that dream in Pharaoh, and then give him all the responsibilities that needs to be done to that, to knowing that Joseph the only one that he gonna have to put in charge to do the type of duties that need to be done. So the second dream, when God planned about to start, letting Pharaoh know. So he let Pharaoh know, okay, I'm giving you abundance of years to store up stuff. And they also giving Joseph some time to be in charge and all this. Joseph had 7 years, to be in charge of doing all this stuff in 7 years. Because see, once that famine come, that's when God's plan gonna start. Because the Israelites gonna have to set us up into slave. Then they're gonna be stuck there 430 years. So God's 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. Jacob's children would get stuck there, but God would come and free them all. So now Joseph rise to power. Joseph rise to power in Egypt. God said, you're going to be a leader. You're going to be a ruler. You're going to be a king. And God did just that. God placed that dream in Pharaoh, knowing that he's going to need someone to do the duties of the responsibility that God had placed in his dream for someone to do. Knowing that Joseph gonna be the only one wise enough to to fulfill this job. So Joseph was released from prison, and he was able to interpret the Pharaoh dream. Because the law was with him. Pharaoh response was to raise Joseph, to a position to leadership over all of Egypt, and a preparation for the difficult time which lay ahead. You know, we all got to go through the difficult times, you know, before and God do a lot of preparation. He do a lot of trials, and that's what they said here. They said Joseph was in preparation for the difficult times that he was in, to be ready, to be a leader. Be a leader through all the people. Be a leader through the whole land, just like he used to travel for days just on Egypt, doing his duties, checking everything out. He was, a lot of time in our difficult times, is preparation for your big purpose. Because it said here, the law was with him. Pharaoh's response was to raise Joseph to a position, of leadership, over all Egypt in preparation for the difficult time which had laid ahead of him. And he went through some difficult times. His brothers threw him in a pit. And then when he got rescued out of the pit, he was sold. He was sold to be a slave. And then what's it called, her wife, she lied on him because Joseph refused to sleep with her, and he got thrown in prison, and served about 20 years. After 20 years, that's when he got out, when he was in position. He was in position after he got out. God's name wasn't mentioned too much, but God was working behind the scene. He placed that dream in Pharaoh, about the abundance of 7 years, and saying that you're going to need somebody to do this and do that and do that. That was all part of God's plan to put Joseph in position. He know how to go around situations to get you where he wants you to be at. So after recognize Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh, and discernment, Pharaoh put him in charge of his whole palace. Not only Egypt land, but Pharaoh put him in charge of the palace because he saw how smart, intelligent Joseph was. He interpreted that dream that Pharaoh was so troubled about. And he saw how he was interpreting not on his own, but he saw how God was working in Joseph to interpret Joseph's dreams. And Pharaoh saw how intelligent he was, that God's spirit was all over Joseph. So everything expected, but his throne. He gave him everything except his throne. Pharaoh said, I'm going to keep my throne. All the respect. You in charge of everything else, but I'm keeping my throne. So then he expanded his degree by putting Joseph in charge of the whole land of Egypt. The whole land of Egypt. Now this effectively make him a chief of the entire land, and we see that God was silenced, working behind the scene. It's God give Joseph that promotion. It's God that allowed Joseph to get in position. And God put that dream in Pharaoh. And let Pharaoh know you're going to need someone to do all this responsibilities, because you need someone to collect all this stuff. You need someone to put fifth aside here and sell so much here. So you need somebody that's smart, who know how to calculate stuff, who know how to add and who know how to subtract. And Joseph was the only smart one that he saw that God's spirit was all over Joseph. He saw how Joseph was interpreting the dream. He know Joseph wasn't done on his own. He know he was guided by God. So Joseph spent 13 years as an Egyptian slave. Spent 13 years as a slave, and he was in prison. So Joseph's new position, his name is changed, and he accepted as an Egyptian. You remember Pharaoh changed his name after he interpreted that dream that had Pharaoh so trouble about. Pharaoh had changed his name, and it was an Egyptian name, and Joseph, he accepted, and when Joseph got pulled out of that pit. Now you know Joseph, he was big enough. He could have had ran away and he could have went home. But he chose to stay because he knew that was a place that God wanted him at. You know, because he could have left. He was 17 at the time. He could have left and he could have went home. But he didn't want to break out and run and go home. He wanted to stay right where he was at. He went through difficult times, but he still did not leave. You know, he knew that God wanted him there, and he refused to leave, and he stayed. When he was beaten, you know, he was in prison, he was in a dungeon. You know, when they had to told Pharaoh about this young Hebrew person that can interpret your dream, they had to pull Joseph out of a dungeon to bring him over to Pharaoh. You know, so Joseph went through something. You know, so he accepted the name, he accepted the Egyptian name, you know, and he had raised him to a position, you know, of great power. You know, he went from being in a pit, he went from being in prison, he went from being a slave, you know, to now he in position. He done rise up to a position. He done rise up to be a leader, you know, and he rise to be a position of great power. You know, this someone had been a slave. This someone had been in prison. This someone they had to pull him out of a pit. You know, and he been rise up to the top as a high position. You know, he went from a small position. He just jumped out to a high position. You know, great power. You know, he had been fed after being a slave and a prisoner for 13 years. Now, Joseph had moved beyond the wrong done to him in the past. And that's something I'm working on. You know, I'm still trying to heal. And every time I'm thinking I'm doing good, you know, obstacles is still in my way. You know, and Joseph is doing good because just like he said, he done moved on from all the wrongdoing that was done to him. You know, you have to really get past that in order to move forward. You know, and I'm still in a place of trying to deal with all the stuff that been done to me, and it's still being done. That will make my situation so hard to try to move and be past it. You know, Joseph went through a whole lot too, and I'm going through a whole lot. You know, healing is so hard for you to heal, especially when the situation have not stopped. You know, so Joseph looked back on those events and he see God hand for more clearly than he see his brothers. And that, you know, and that's what I have to do. That's what we all have to do. I'm still working on myself. I'm still trying to heal, you know, and this is how Joseph was healed. You know, Joseph said he looked back on her life, and I do that all the time. You know, you have to. He looked back on his life, all the events that he went through. He talking about the pit, the slave, you know, the prison. He talking about all those events. You know, after all that he done went through, he still looked at God's hands with far more clearly than he see his brother, because he realized, you know, he been in position from Pharaoh had pulled him out of the dungeon to interpret his dream. And he never went back to the dungeon. He went straight into position. You know, so when he went straight in position, he recognized God's hand in his life. He recognized his dream. And he see that his dream is coming to pass. You know, his dream, God told him he was going to be a leader. You know, all the stuff that he went through, he see that God's hand was still moving in his life. You know, he in position like God told him he was going to be in position. You know, and he going to see another event going to come to light when his brother come and meet him. And remember, his brother said, who you think going to bow down to you? You think I'm going to bow down to you? But we going to see in the next package, you know, what the brothers going to do when they meet Joseph. Because they ain't even going to know that Joseph, but we going to see the first thing they're going to do when they see him. Okay, it's God's silence work. God's silence working in Joseph's life, in Joseph's behalf. You know, Joseph could have grown bitter and inflamed by the dreadful circumstances of his life. And it can't make you bitter. It can't make you angry. You know, it can't make all those things, but at some point in time, we have to snap out of it and realize that God is our only source. You know, He's the only one we can go to. He the only one hold our life, our future into His hands. Just like He put a dream in Joseph at 17 years old about Joseph's future, our future, our life holds in God's hands. And we see how God was working in the behalf of Joseph, of his future. When He told Joseph what He gonna be, and He meant that because Joseph's in charge, just like God said. So Joseph could have grown bitter and angry because he was in a pit. God allowed him to be in prison for 13 years, you know, and he was enslaved 13 years. He was in prison, and altogether it was like 20 years time the brothers gonna come and see him. He could have been bitter, but he chose not to be bitter. He knew it was all part of his trial, and just like Joe did not get mad with God. He suffered so much pain, you know. And Joseph, they're saying here, Joseph could have grown bitter. He was just a boy to go through all this stuff, 17 years old. He went through so much as a boy and did not have his father with him. You know, he could have grown bitter. He could have grown angry. You know, by the dreadful circumstance of his life that had happened. After all, he had been sold into slavery. By his own brothers, and that's something how you can go through something by your own sibling. They all just throw him in a pit and just left him there. And then when the people came to scoop him out, then it goes over and sell him on top of so this little boy had went through something, at the age of 17, and then was sent to prison after refusing to sleep with his master wife. That's another situation. He had so many events, had came against him, finally, after circumcising into something good, at the age of 30, Joseph experienced a new beginning, and just like I put our packets out a couple of times before, God will break you into pieces. I'm experienced, Joseph experienced, Joe experienced. You can get broken into pieces. Just like Joseph did not get better. He was in jail being a slave for 13, 20 years. And he still loved the God. He still wasn't bitter. He still wasn't mad. And after all that he went through, God bless him so much. God put him in charge, and it said here he experienced a new beginning. A new beginning. God had restored him. Restore his life back, restore his peace back, restore that he don't even remember the trouble that he went through, and he rose to the promise within Pharaoh's court. He saved the nation for famine. He saved the nation for famine. Because when it was in the abundance years, he was in charge of putting some on the side. He was collecting and storing some, and he was selling some. So he saved the nation before it got so severe, and he was blessed with a family of his own. Remember God said he was going to be fruitful. He named that second child name meaning was God had fruitful him, meaning he gave him his own child, his own wife. So he had his own family. So he forgot about what the brothers did to him. He ain't forgot. He don't think about what the brothers did to him. Because you ain't going to never forget your drama. He never forget, because when the brothers come, he going to still remember what they did to him. But what he's saying, that he don't think about it all the time, what they did. He's saying, God gave me a new beginning. I'm in charge. I'm blessed. So I don't need to think about all the trouble that I went through. So that's what he's saying. He said God made him not remember all the stuff that he went through. He didn't forget. He just don't think about it. Because when the brothers come, he's still going to remember what the brothers did to him. Joseph's son name described his life story. So when he had his first sons before the famine came, the name meaning something. The name meaning Joseph's life. The struggles, the pain that he went through. The Messiah mean God had made me forget all my troubles. You know, because God had blessed him. You know, God, he know that God was working behind the scene. He know it was God that put him in position because he interpreted the dream. He know that God put that dream in him for a reason. Put all that difficult stuff up in there for a reason for Joseph to be in charge of that. God already knew nobody else couldn't do the job that Joseph had to do. So he know Pharaoh wasn't gonna have no other choice but to chose Joseph to be in charge to do that particular job that God placed in Pharaoh. And the second child, his name mean God had made me fruitful in the land of his suffering. You know, in the mix of all that stuff that Joseph was going through, he had a wife and started having his own children. That's what he meant. And through all his suffering, he had a wife and he had his own children. So he had his own family in the mix of all the chaos. You know, Joseph experienced God's silent work as much in slavery and in prison as he did when he rose to position of being in charge, just like God said he will be. You know, so he experienced and he know that it was God's silent work that was working behind the scene on his behalf. He already know it was God placed that dream in Pharaoh. It was God placed the duties that were going to take for the abundance years to come together. And he know there was nobody, Pharaoh going to have no other choice but to chose Joseph, to do it. So he know God was working in his behalf, So whatever our circumstance is, we have to trust God. Joseph had trust God. Abraham had trust God, and they could have been mad and bitter, but Joseph chose not to because God had given him a new beginning. God had restored him, that he didn't have to worry about all the pain and suffering that he went through. God put that dream in him at 17 years old that he going to be in charge, that he going to be a ruler, a leader, a king. So all the difficulties that he went through, that dream stuck with him. It stuck with him, and God made a promise to him in that dream, and the promise came to pass, and that's the reason why he probably didn't get bitter and mad, because God put that dream in him and that all this stuff would happen. And then a mix of all that stuff you're going to do, sometimes, it don't even look like, include myself and a lot of other people that's in a storm, and sometimes it don't even look like it's going to get there. Joseph went through so much. He like, well, when I'm going to be in position just to that, but in due time, he was. So I guess that's why he didn't get mad, because as God put that dream inside of him of his future, he know eventually it was going to come to pass. So whatever our circumstance is, we have to trust God like Joseph did. You will see how God will work silence in your life behind the scene, just like he did for Joseph. He'll do it for us. Joseph went through a whole lot before he got into position. Because see, when God said you're going to be this and you're going to be that, it's not going to be easy to get into it. It wasn't easy for Joseph. It wasn't easy for Joe. Joe lost everything. Joe went through a whole lot before he got everything back. God ain't going to allow us to step into nothing easy. I'm a witness. He will not allow you to step into nothing easy. Joseph, Joe, and myself going through so much to get to rise to the top. And we see that it happened for Joseph, that his dream came to pass. He got into position, and sometimes God will take you through the wilderness, before you get to the top. That's just like it did with the Israelites. Israel had to go out through the wilderness. They were supposed to take 3 days journey, but it took 40 years, and they because they mumbled. And that's why mine's taking so long too, because you can't mumble and complain while you're going through your trials, and that's why the 3 days of their journey took 40 years, you know. But we don't know why Joseph one took so long, because he did not complain. You know, he went through his trials. You know, because sometimes God, just like mine, and just like Joseph, and just like Joe, you know, God will take you through that wilderness first. You know, that wild wilderness. You know, the darkness. God will take you through the darkness. He will take you to the wilderness. He will take you through all kind of difficult stuff before you rise to the top. You know, Joseph went through all kinds of stuff to rise to the top. You know, Job lost everything. You know, the devil took him, hit him, put a hole in his side. You know, went through all kinds of stuff. But at the end, Job got it all back. And we see that Joseph, through all, it took 20 years. 13 being a slave, being in prison. Altogether, it's been 20 years before he see his brother. So that means 20 years of pain and suffering before he rise to the top. You know, so we see Joseph's story. We see that Joseph's dream. God put his dream in him at 17 years old, but 20 years later, it came to pass. You know, he had to go through that wilderness. You know, all through that dark, through that difficult time, all through that dark valley. You know, he had to go through all that before he had rise to the top. You know, and God wasn't physical with him. God was silent, working behind the scene. You know, making things happen, putting pieces together. You know, put the dream in Pharaoh to put him in position. That's why I say when we get promotion, when we get rewards and all that, it comes from God. Because we see how God works. God put dreams into people, you know. And you know, he put that dream in Pharaoh, you know, and told him, you're going to need this and that to be done. So that means you have to appoint somebody to be in charge who wise enough to calculate all this stuff. You know, 5% here, 5% there. So you need somebody to calculate, who know how to subtract and add. You know, and so he looking around. Okay, I don't have nobody to do that. Joseph standing right there. I don't have nobody to do that. Who can do this? Then he look at Joseph again. Okay, you got a spirit of God with you. You interpret that dream. You working side by side with God. Okay, I'm gonna give you this position. You know, and that was God doing. That was God working behind the scene, making sure. See, God put that dream in Joseph that you're gonna be in charge. So God had to make sure that he gonna be in charge. You know, God had to make sure that he gonna be a leader. You know, God ain't gonna give you no little simple job. You know, God always go big. You know, so he a ruler over the whole land. That take him days to travel all over Egypt to check things out, because this a new boss in town. You know, I got to ride around and see who the employees is. You know, and it take him days to do that, because that's how big Egypt was. You know, but he was in charge and he did his rounds. Soon he got the position, you know, he left from Pharaoh talking and he went on his duties, try to meet everybody. He traveled all over Egypt just to meet the employees and everything. See what's going on. A good employee, you know, and God know what he was doing. You know, he picked Joseph with no experience, you know, but the spirit of God was all over Joseph. You know, knowing he was smart and intelligent to do, and God's spirit was in him to guide him to whatever he need to do. You know, because everything Joseph was doing, you know, it will be blessed. You know, remember he was in prison. He had a position in prison. You know, so he was smart, intelligent, with God's spirit guide him through. You know, so we see that Joseph is in charge of Egypt. You know, and we see his dream had came to light. God had placed that dream in him at 17 years old, that you're going to be a leader, you know, that you're going to be a king, you know, that you're going to be in charge, you know. So we see that all this came to pass. You know, we see his dream came to pass. You know, we see that God stuck with his word, and that God worked silently behind the scene and made it happen for Joseph. You know, so that's all the word I have for you on today. Y'all have a blessed night, and I see y'all on the next video.